It is not a burden, it's a responsibility that politicians like the President, like President Zelensky relish, but also you, of course, President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, your leadership very much displayed these days, and I think everyone in Europe is most grateful for that. Vielen Dank für Ihre Worte. Schön, dass Sie da sind. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, we're restructuring a bit, and of course, the presidents, due to their very constricted time schedules now, will have to leave, but there's actually not a break. We're continuing right now with the Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister for European integration. In 30 seconds, we're just giving please give him another hand, the President Ursula von der Leyen and President Chaputova. And while the presidents, the two presidents are leaving, we are actually going to pick right up. So let me just repeat, there's not a break, quite on the contrary. We're picking up right from where we left off, and with us, and I couldn't have asked now for a better speaker after everything we have heard to guide us through the next 25 minutes of a very important subject matter. She is, of course, the Deputy Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic integration of Ukraine. Please welcome Olha Stefanishyna.
Thank you. Hello.
Deputy Prime Minister, it's wonderful to have you with us. Thank you so much for being here. Your president couldn't have been more clear about your country's aspiration to join the European Union, and Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, couldn't have been more clear, saying it is our moral duty as Europeans to bring Ukraine on board, to ensure that your country, that Ukraine, becomes an EU member. How does it make you feel hearing those words from the European Commissioner?
Well, first and foremost, I have this very positive feeling because I have the honor, just like President said, to represent this mandate in Ukrainian government in such an extremely important time. And I'm really happy to hear from the leaders that the decision we expect in June is not treated as technical. This is treated as a very important historical shift. And basically, while I was listening to the colleagues and had a lot of meetings over the day-to-day, I found myself in the middle of the thought that we have never used the word leaders as often as we're using it right now. And it's time for leaders. This is historical time for leadership because we have the historical shift. After the Second World War, we have identified so many new words and new terms, like the forceful deportation, filtration camps, genocide, and many, many others. These were such crimes that had to be re-identified. And that's what is happening now in Ukraine. And after the Second World War, the world said, never again. We established the NATO, the European project started, and this war in Ukraine also opens the way towards the new future, on which whether we will build on all the values that we've been building, or we will not show leadership, and we will be consuming the Russian narratives, the Russian agenda, and be in the Russian circle of propaganda and blackmail. So that's exactly how we feel when we put our expectation towards EU membership. It's not a question for us to be answered whether we belong to European family or not. To the surprise of many representatives of 24/7, I can tell you that we are already so much integrated in EU. 6.5 million of Ukrainian people are already in your capitals. 2+ million have been already part of European Union since the visa-free. We are part of the energy market. We have zero customs and duties. We have a full trade together. So we are already part of European Union. And our people, the commitment of our people is 91% supporting that. So the leadership we expect is the decision we expect by the end of the June.
leadership is very much needed. Please use Slido and the app, the GLOBSEC app, so that I can incorporate your questions to the Deputy Prime Minister. The sessions, we have another 20 minutes to go, and I will see the questions that you are displaying here. So, all warm words aside, of course, and there's a reality. There's a reality that many leading European politicians are also voicing, including Vice President Franz Timmermans, who is saying, yes, of course, reiterating what you say, Ukraine is part of the European family. But for Ukraine actually to become a member of the European Union, that is going to take a long time. We cannot cut Ukraine slack even under these circumstances. Your response?
Well, it's clear that such things are not happening in one day. And I would say more just to evaporate all of the concerns like that it's not in Ukrainian interest to become a member of European Union very fast. Because we want to be a competitive economy, a strong member of European Union, and that requires a very complicated negotiations, and that requires rebuilding Ukraine, restoring, regaining the economic power. And this is a long way to go. But what we do, we want to split the discussion on granting the candidate status and broader enlargement discussion. In fact, Ukraine is ready to sit over the same table, for example, as Macron suggested, as part of a broader political discussion on the enlargement policy, on the future of the European project. But we should make sure that everybody understand that Ukraine is not going to play the promises game and the ambiguity game as it was before, from Budapest to Bucharest, from the promises following the memorandum on nuclear weapons to the promises to become the NATO member, which has in fact not delivering on these promises has in fact affected 3 wars, 2 of which has been happening and happening now on Ukrainian soil. And it's very important that following the political signal given to us in summit in Versailles in March, it should be set in stone with a very concrete decision. And in fact, as the same as President were referring to the gas sanctions, it's not only for Ukraine the step should be taken, it's the step which should be taken for EU, because one day there will be a window of opportunity when the regime in Russia will change. And we all will be seeking for the answers. What place will we offer for Russia? And if Ukraine is now set in stone as part of the European Union, this is part of the answer. We will not be hesitating of how to set up relations between Russia and Ukraine after the war is over, after the regime is there. What should be the place we should offer Russia? There will be a clarity about the region, about Ukraine, and about the fact that Russia should already adjust to the reality which we might form in June. Otherwise, if we're not forming it, it will also lead to this ambiguity, and it will serve the Russian interest of the policy of splitting and not clarity.
Again, this is a reminder to everyone in the audience to use Slido on the GLOBSEC app if you want to submit your questions to the Deputy Prime Minister. So I'm hearing no frustration on your part. So if leading politicians are saying, yes, we want Ukraine in the European Union, but it is understood, even given the context, even at times of war, we cannot skip steps. Still, all criteria have to be fulfilled. There's no frustration on your part about that.
Well, it would depend on the decision taken by the end of June. So the frustration will be here if based on the very substantial answers to the questionnaire we've provided, which are more than 5,000 pages of Ukrainian statehood, everything we've been building for 30 years, including last 8 years, together with European Union. If this is not enough to be part of the family, if it's not enough to say that we are making the steps further, if the suffering and 2 revolutions standing for European trade of Ukraine, inspired by our people, are not enough, so we will constatate the fact that there are no criteria. There's no criteria, and we should reinvent them. But in this particular moment of time, I fully appreciate the words of Madam President that this is a historical duty, and it is a time for leadership not for the leaders of the opinion, but for the leaders of action. And it is needed, and it is seen from Kiev very vividly, because we do not have the political games, we do not have elections, we all have only one task: to survive as a country.
Solidarity is a word that has been uttered numerous times here this morning, obviously by your president as well. Are you, as Ukrainians, as a leading politician of your country, are you feeling that solidarity that is often displayed, certainly in words and sometimes deeds as well? Is there satisfaction on your end, or would you say that there's still some room for improvement as far as our European partners are concerned?
Solidarity is a job. Solidarity is not coming up from the middle of nowhere. This is the basis which should be built, and this is something that we understand. And we're particularly happy that we have so much of solidarity in understanding that Ukraine needed to be provided with necessary military support. And the new formats are established. The Ramstein format brings this solidarity together and brings it to a very concrete result, understanding of things. For us, it's really important. But I think that generally, solidarity and the process and the way towards getting the unity on specific issues is the huge asset of our democracies. It's the huge asset of dialogue, because once the solidarity is there, once the unity is there, nothing can undermine it. And this decision is as solid as a stone.
And speaking of solidarity and unity, obviously the 27 European nations just recently met in Brussels to impose an oil and energy embargo on Russia. It was adopted largely. Obviously, Hungary is playing a special role in this particular regard, much to the dismay, I would assume, of your country and your people. What would your message be to Budapest? What would your message be to Prime Minister Orban?
Well, we are broadcasted, so I will try to be
we're amongst friends.
To adjust, in a very close, in a very small circle. I would say that nobody should have an illusion that it is possible to hide behind different trade-ins. Now we understand when we now have, and happy for the sixth package of sanctions, but the gravity and the amount of crimes has never lessened throughout all of these months when the negotiations were taking place. And these sanctions, they are the sanctions, individual sanctions, which has been imposed on those crimes from Bucha. But now we have Mariupol, we have Severodonetsk, we have dozens and dozens of murdered people and killed children around Ukraine. And we could have already been discussing the eighth package of sanctions. So by the end of the day, I think we should all recognize that we all see that it's not about trade-in. It's about playing the Russian narrative and showing that there's a way that you can save some time for oligarchs in Russia who will be subjected to sanctions, to hide their actives, to adjust to the sanctions. And this should be a lesson learned for the next packages of sanctions, to understand that the values and the understanding of the things, the reality of the things, should be on top. I will stop here.
Yes, we have approximately 13 minutes left. Interestingly enough, I'm being told that we already have 4 questions on Slido, and this is more a message to my people backstage. I'm not seeing anyone here on my screen. Might be just a slip-up. So there you go. Here we're having the questions. Thank you so much for displaying them. Let's start right with the first one. What is standing in the way to give Ukraine EU candidate status?
Well, I would say like given my background, it's like my destiny. I've spent all of my public career dealing with European integration, and I wanted to step back from this job for a couple of times, but it brought me back to this orbit. I would say that we're doing pretty well. And nobody would expect that running for membership in European Union should be an easy process. The positive thing is that I can here from this stage confirm that none of 27 leaders would say no for Ukraine to become a member of European Union. But we have a very individual approach to have the agreement with each and every leader. Some of them are still hesitating. Some of them never knew Ukraine, basically. So it's not Slovakia, Poland, or Czechia, or any other country. Like such countries who are not the neighboring countries to Ukraine, they came up to know Ukraine and Ukrainians just 3 months ago. And it's very important for them to preserve this dynamics, this energy, and this understanding, and to multiplicate it into a political decision. So we still have some time. We've done our job. Basically, the backdrop of reforms we've been doing for the last years allowed us to stay fully operational at the government, the parliament, the financial and banking sector. We are fully operational in a time of full-scale war. Half of the Ukrainian government has been operating for the first 3 weeks from the bomb shelter. We literally were sleeping in one bed and eating from one plate, but we remained fully operational because we've been building the resilience. So we are ready for that. We hope that the council meeting by the end of the June will have the same commitment and bravery to deliver on the historical demand which is standing before them.
Let's go back to the slide and see some of the questions here. What do you expect from EU membership? Heinrich Kreft, former German diplomat, is asking, what do you expect from EU membership? Will it be easier to do the necessary reforms at home because of the war?
Of course, because it's a clear path towards an understanding that EU membership is becoming part of the market, becoming part of the benefits and the obligations. It has been very complicated before the war because Ukrainian association agreement is almost the accession agreement with the without the word accession. And whenever I had to run to the parliament and force them to introduce the new regulation, they were asking, why would we do it? So membership to EU gives a clear answer to that. And Ukraine, as a, let's say, together with many countries who whether had the candidate status or not before, is the veteran of European integration. And we grew up from consuming the European policies. We grew up from this format. Literally, we need to be part of the policy planning. Otherwise, there's no room for discussing on Ukraine as a stronger, competitive economy. So we need to sit over the table, but not to be on the menu.
For those who haven't had a chance to download the app yet, yeah, please go ahead if you want to clap. This is, for those who haven't had a chance to download the app yet, I do want to give those who still have questions beyond the app the opportunity. If you want to raise your hand, we're going to come to you. We have microphones to the left and right of the room, approximately 9 minutes left. So please raise your hand and let me know that you want to chime in. Right here, Michael, of course, from the German Marshal, Michael Baranowski. Microphone should be coming to you. Perhaps you can stand up, Michael. Yeah, please stand up so they can see you properly. Introduce yourself quickly.
Yes, thank you very much, Ali. Michał Baranowski, GMF, German Marshall Fund of the United States, Warsaw office. Thank you very much for fascinating conversation. I wanted to ask you about rebuilding Ukraine and about the Marshall Plan for Ukraine a little bit. Particular question, what do you expect? When should we start? How do we finance it? What are the Ukrainian priorities for this process? Thanks.
Thank you. That's probably the question I can give the straight answer to. So there are 3 ultimate needs, and Madam President has already mentioned some of them. Is the short-term financing to cover the deficit of the budget, which is part of the unity among population, which is essential. Then ongoing reconstruction. You are very well aware that we regained back the control of a huge amount of territories from Kiev to Sumy, but also Kharkiv and Zaporizhia has now been deoccupied in a very significant amount. Russians have a very clear playbook. So what they do when they get into the town, they do the mining, they cut the electricity grid, they cut the water supplies, they cut the gas supplies in each and every village and town, the same situation. So whenever we deoccupy the territory, we have a set of deoccupation actions to be taken. So the ongoing rebuilding is something we should be done right now. We should not wait until the war is over. This is a understanding of what should be done right now. And Ukraine is a huge country, and we have like less than 5% of our territory occupied, and 95 to be rebuilt back again, including the western Ukraine. And the third point is, of course, the big reconstruction of Ukraine. And here we reached the president, personally reached Madam President von der Leyen, for her to help to take the leadership in that regard, to coordinate these efforts among other financial players. Because we have applied for membership to EU, we are committed to these reforms, we will be implementing these reforms, but we also want a strong, reliable and trustworthy partner who will be committed to undergo throughout of the process with Ukraine to coordinate these efforts. So European Union will take the lead on coordinating the financial efforts. We will present our reconstruction plan after the war, just like in the beginning of July. But also, we want that European capitals to take the lead on reconstruction of the specific regions and cities of Ukraine as part of European integration, as part of understanding and preserving this wave of feeling towards Ukraine and taking the commitment over specific parts.
Thank you so much. We have approximately 5 minutes left. If we can get the microphone here to the very first row. You don't have to get up. I see the crutches. That's all good. We're coming to you from left and right, as a matter of fact. Please introduce yourself.
My therapist tells me it's a good exercise. Katarina Maternova, European Commission. I'm the head of the support group for Ukraine. Dear Olga, it was good to hear President von der Leyen and her concrete expectations on the platform for reconstruction as we are developing it. But I have a different question. You mentioned the skeptics among the leaders. As you and your colleagues go around the capitals, one thing that one needs to constantly battle are the Russian narratives about Ukraine. You mentioned that many people didn't know Ukraine, which is very much true. And many times Ukraine was looked at through the Russian prism. That continues despite the war. What is your answer when you go to the skeptical member states? What do you say about corruption? What do you say about what you have done? What is your narrative to counterbalance the Russian famous narrative, oh, you're so corrupt, you're practically a failed state? Clearly, you are not a failed state. The resilience of the institutions is impressive during the war. But what do you tell the skeptics?
Well, I tell that I here represent the fully functional government and the Ukrainian parliament, which is keep on planning the plenary sessions and, in fact, prioritizes the list of EU integration legislation, and I hold on them, saying that, okay, you should not be hurried. So we have fully operational institutions. But what I do is I try to impose all those transformations we did before and ask the question whether you would do it in your country, whether you would pass the legislation on the judiciary which would give the priority to international immunity to international experts to decide on which judges would deliver the justice in your country. Would you do this? Would you do this? Would you mobilize all the political parties and leaders and the president and all the political will to make this step done? Would you do so many things we did before? And I have enormous number of examples. Would you subject it to be a fully invaded throughout all of the territory of Ukraine by the second army in the world? Think of implementing the law on the High Council of Justice and proceed with the selection of judges to this Council of Justice under the delivering the online interviews from the bulb shelter. Would you do this? And of course, we're not perfect. We're not sainter than the Pope, but many of you in many of your capitals are the same. But one thing is very clear: it is the commitment. And it is the commitment and the independence, the civil society and the people of Ukraine. they are much more critical than the most skepticist in capitals, from Netherlands to Denmark. So, and we afraid of them much more than any of the narratives that we hear from the capitals, because they judge us, they control us, and they hold us accountable for each and every step we take.
Deputy Prime Minister, we're almost out of time. Very grateful to have you here at this critical juncture. What is you've already spread and shared many important messages here to this distinguished audience. Many more will be shared throughout the next 3 days. What is the number one takeaway that you want this audience to leave this session with? This number one takeaway, the number one message from you, from Ukraine.
I think, well, it's really complicated, I mean, to sit in front of this audience when the war is ongoing on your territory and the people are dying, and you see and read so many reports. Of course, I would like to be immediately in Kiev in my office and do something that I can from that area, but I'm here today because I want you to hear our messages. I want that beyond Ukraine, nobody would think that we are like crazy Ukrainians fighting the war and we're screaming and shouting our expectations and wanting. We see things much more crystal clear because we have only one task: to survive as the country and to build our European future. That's why it's much more clear for us how things look abroad. So I would be happy that if you could retranslate these messages on behalf of my president throughout your audiences, your leaders, and recollect the word leadership with a new understanding and a new spirit brought from Ukraine. Thank you.
Your country obviously has been receiving unprecedented attention from all over the world. Probably the focus was never bigger on your country throughout its existence. Very much last words what I've said to President Zelensky, of course. Let's hope that this war will be over very soon, that the suffering will end, so the restructuring that you and also the President of the European Commission have so detail-wise and elaborately spoken about can be implemented. The attention that your country is receiving is right now, perhaps a final note. How concerned are you about war fatigue throughout Europe? Right now and throughout the next 3 days, Ukraine will be the number one issue on the item, and at many other conferences as well. It was so in Davos, it was so in other conferences. But are you concerned? Are you concerned that at the end of the day we're living in a very fast news cycle, that the attention at some point will shift away?
We are a very romantic nation, but we are realistic at the same time. We understand that the longer the war is lasting, the more fatigue there will be. And we now see a fatigue in taking the decisions even in such a time from some leaders. But what we think is important is to form the common narrative and understanding what the war is and which outcome this war should end. All the leaders, regardless whether the war is on the highlights or not, should understand that Ukraine should regain back its territories in its full entirety, as it was agreed and recognized in 1991. If this understanding is set in stone among leaders, it doesn't matter whether we're on the front line or not. It is just steps to be taken. The same goes to sanctions. As long as the war is on our soil, as long as the foot of at least one Russian soldier is on our soil, sanctions should be increased. Russia should be further isolated until the war is over and Russia is neutralized as a terrorist state as it is. So I think that it is more important that having this understanding being on a highlight is having the narrative and understanding and set in stone understanding that the war should be over with the restoration of Ukrainian territorial integrity, and the pressure should remain as long as the foot of a Russian soldier steps to Ukrainian land. Thank you.
Olha Stefanishyna, the Deputy Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic integration of Ukraine. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your transparency, for your honesty, your bluntness, very much needed and wanted in times like these. This is your applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for putting so much attention to Ukraine and giving the opportunity to have such a frank discussion. It is very important that people can hear the voice of Ukraine, the voice of our people, on behalf of which we are speaking. Thank you so much.
And this